The summer heat pressed down on Interstate 75, making the asphalt shimmer like a river of molten metal. The rest stop near a small town in Georgia was buzzing with travelers. Trucks rumbled in and out, families spilled from cars stretching cramped legs, and the faint smell of fried food mingled with gasoline. Most people were caught in their own routines, laughing, complaining, or texting, oblivious to the small drama unfolding in a gray SUV parked near the vending machines. Inside the SUV, 3-year-old Lily sat quietly on the worn backseat, her legs dangling above the floor. She was small for her age, with golden curls that framed her face and wide, hazel eyes that often reflected curiosity. Today, however, those eyes were wary, cautious, and alert. She clutched a small, worn stuffed rabbit with one hand, the other resting hesitantly on the edge of her booster seat. Across from her, her mother's boyfriend, a man in his mid-30s with a tense jaw and darting eyes, scrolled idly on his phone, occasionally looking up to glare at her. The man's grip on the steering wheel tightened as he noticed the rest stop crowd. He muttered something under his breath, a low, sharp comment that made Lily flinch. She hugged her rabbit closer, trying not to move too fast, trying not to draw attention. She remembered what her preschool teacher, Ms. Harper, had once shown her, a tiny hand gesture that meant help. It had been part of a safety demonstration for children, something to do if they ever felt unsafe around a grown-up. Lily had never needed it before, but today, every instinct in her little body screamed that she did. When the man finally allowed her to step out, she followed carefully, keeping close to the door, letting him lead her toward the vending machines. Most of the travelers were distracted, buying snacks or checking directions on their phones. Lily took a deep breath. Slowly, deliberately, she raised her tiny hand. Thumb tucked, fingers folded over, repeated twice, just as Ms. Harper had shown. She kept her gaze downward, pretending to look at a picture on her shirt, but the signal was there, small and clear to anyone who knew to look. Across the parking lot, near a shaded bench by a row of planters, Daniel Brooks watched the crowd. He was a retired deputy from Marietta, heading home after a few days visiting family. Beside him, his old K-9 partner, Ranger, a retired police dog with a sleek black and tan coat and bright, intelligent eyes, rested on the pavement. Ranger had served with him for over 8 years in the Cobb County Sheriff's Office, trained to detect danger, fear, and deception. Though retired, Ranger's instincts were sharp. The dog's ears twitched. He lifted his head and stared, fixed, unblinking, at the small girl near the SUV. Daniel initially thought it was the heat making Ranger restless, or maybe just the movement of people in traffic, but Ranger's low growl, almost inaudible, drew his attention. His eyes followed the girl, narrowed slightly. She repeated the hand gesture, twice. 3 times, Daniel's heart skipped. He knew that gesture, silent plea, distress. Someone needed help. The man beside her shifted, noticing Daniel's gaze. His movements became abrupt. He reached down to grab her wrist, guiding her back toward the SUV with more force than necessary. Lily's small hand dropped instantly, fingers curling around her stuffed rabbit. Ranger growled again, louder this time, and tugged gently at Daniel's leg. Daniel realized the dog wasn't reacting to the crowd. He was reacting to Lily, and something about the man's tight grip and nervous glances. Daniel's pulse quickened. He subtly reached for his phone, pretending to scroll through messages. His thumb hit the call button for 911. Calmly, quietly, he reported the gray SUV, the license plate number, its location at the rest stop, and the unusual tension in the man's behavior. "It might just be a parent and child," he told the dispatcher, keeping his voice even, "but the child seems scared," repeating a hand signal. He didn't mention Ranger yet. He didn't have to. The dog's behavior spoke volumes. Lily's mother's boyfriend, sensing eyes on him, turned abruptly toward the SUV. His movements were sharp, jerky, impatient. Lily shuffled behind him, trying to appear normal. She pressed herself against the side of the door, hoping no one would notice. But Ranger's gaze never left her. The dog's head tilted slightly, as if signaling to Daniel, "Watch. Pay attention. Something's wrong." As the man finally let Lily step back into the SUV, Ranger stood, alert and rigid. Daniel tightened his grip on the leash, following the car with his eyes. Lily pressed herself against the window, small hand clenched on her rabbit, cheeks flushed with the heat and anxiety. Daniel felt a chill, the kind that creeps along the spine when something doesn't feel right. He had encountered danger before, many times on duty, but there was something urgent, visceral about this moment. The man started the engine, tires crunching over gravel. Ranger gave a low warning bark, his tail stiff. Daniel stayed seated, careful not to alarm the SUV's occupants, but he continued to follow with his eyes. He noted every detail, the vehicle's make and model, the man's tense posture, the subtle fear in the child's movements. Each second stretched endlessly. Lily's tiny, silent plea had already set a chain of events into motion. Inside the SUV, Lily's heartbeat raced. She whispered to her rabbit, "Please see me." She didn't know who would see it, didn't know who would respond, but instinct told her to try. Across the lot, Ranger's keen nose and trained senses had picked up her fear. Daniel, experienced enough to recognize a child in danger, felt a weight settle in his chest. He knew that if he acted, and acted quickly, he could prevent a tragedy. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Families moved lazily toward the bathrooms and food court, oblivious to the drama unfolding. Lily's hand rested briefly on the seat, ready to make the gesture again if needed. Ranger's eyes never left her. The bond between dog and human, trained and instinctive, was powerful and undeniable. And in that moment, in the middle of a busy rest stop on a hot Georgia afternoon, a 3-year-old girl had whispered for help without a sound, and a retired police dog had already begun the rescue. The first link in a chain of courage, instinct, and quick thinking had been forged. The SUV's engine roared. The child held her breath, and across the lot, Ranger's paw tapped the ground, ready to move at a moment's notice. The rest stop, once ordinary, was now the starting point of a story that would change lives forever. The gray SUV merged back onto Interstate 75, weaving slightly as it accelerated into the afternoon traffic. Daniel tightened his grip on Ranger's leash. The dog's body was taut, muscles coiled beneath his sleek coat. Though retired, Ranger's instincts hadn't dulled. Every movement, every subtle tension in the driver's hands and Lily's tiny frame told him something was very wrong. Daniel kept a careful distance, pretending to be another vehicle on the highway. He knew the rules of engagement. He was retired but still trained. Observation first, action second. Ranger's ears flicked, catching every noise, the hum of tires over asphalt, the distant rumble of trucks, and the faint, irregular sobs Lily stifled behind the SUV window. The child's breathing was shallow, tentative, but her fear radiated like a beacon. Daniel remembered countless days on duty with Ranger. He'd seen the dog detect hidden weapons, drugs, and threats that a human might miss. Now his partner's nose and eyes were focused entirely on Lily. The subtle way she shifted in her seat, pressing against the door, the tiny movements of her hands, they all spoke volumes. Ranger sniffed the air, low growl rumbling from deep in his chest. Daniel's pulse quickened. He knew this was serious. Dispatch had acknowledged his earlier 911 call. "State troopers are on the way," the operator said, her voice calm but attentive. Daniel nodded silently, eyes never leaving the SUV. "Keep a safe distance. Don't engage unless necessary." He echoed the instructions in his mind, but he didn't need to. Ranger's gaze alone told him the child needed help before the law could arrive. The retired K9 had already assessed the danger. The SUV swerved slightly to avoid a slow-moving truck. Inside, the man's hands tightened on the wheel. He glanced in the rearview mirror, lips pressing together, a nervous twitch at the corner of his eye. Lily's small hands clutched her stuffed rabbit, pressing it against her chest. She whispered quietly, "Please see me," almost as if the toy could carry her words. Daniel's eyes scanned every vehicle around them, every potential hazard. He was experienced, but following a suspect with a child on board always added a dangerous dimension. One mistake, one sudden maneuver could end badly. Ranger leaned slightly into the leash, signaling his alertness. Daniel felt the familiar connection, years of training with a partner who understood his every command without words. The dog knew what needed to be done. As traffic thickened, the SUV's speed fluctuated. It was clear the man wanted to keep moving to avoid attention. But Daniel, driving a safe distance behind, noticed every small detail. The way Lily flinched when he spoke sharply, the repeated hand gestures she made, subtle and almost imperceptible, desperate signals for help. He realized this was more than a scared child. It was a situation that had likely been escalating for hours, maybe days. The dispatcher kept Daniel updated. "Troopers are less than 10 minutes out. Can you maintain visual without being noticed?" Daniel nodded, though she couldn't see him. He adjusted his speed, matching the SUV, letting Ranger's body language guide his decisions. The dog's eyes were fixed, unwavering. Occasionally, Ranger would step forward, pawing slightly at the leash as if urging Daniel to take action. Daniel resisted. Patience and careful observation were crucial. Lily tried to make herself invisible, pressing against the side of the seat. Her tiny fingers occasionally twitched, repeating the secret hand gesture she had been taught. Each time Ranger reacted, a small whine, a shift of weight, a step forward. Daniel swallowed hard. This wasn't just a training exercise, it was real. Danger had a face now, and it was in that SUV, with Lily trapped inside. The man seemed increasingly agitated. He checked his phone repeatedly, muttering under his breath. His foot tapped nervously on the gas pedal. His grip on Lily's wrist tightened for a brief moment, almost crushing her small hand against the seat. Ranger growled low, warning Daniel that the situation was escalating. Daniel's hands tightened around the leash. He knew the retired dog's instincts were precise. The growl was never false, never without cause. As they approached a slight bend in the highway, the SUV slowed briefly behind a slow-moving delivery truck. The man's anxiety grew. He glanced around as if searching for witnesses. Daniel noticed Lily's gaze flick to the passenger window, her eyes wide. She pressed the rabbit to her chest and made the hand gesture again, subtle but clear. Ranger's ears twitched, and he let out a soft, warning bark. The retired K9 knew that this small, silent gesture carried enormous weight. It was a cry for help. Minutes passed with a tense rhythm. Daniel maintained his calm exterior, keeping Ranger focused, eyes sharp on the SUV. Every light, every exit, every other vehicle was a variable. He thought back to his years on duty, how quickly a seemingly simple pursuit could spiral out of control. But this was different. A child's life was at stake. He couldn't afford distraction or error. Ranger sensed the urgency, his entire body coiled like a spring. Finally, the SUV began to accelerate more aggressively, weaving slightly between lanes. The man's desperation was palpable. Daniel followed carefully, signaling his own intentions with subtle adjustments in speed. Ranger's head swiveled, nostrils flaring as he caught faint scents of fear, sweat, and uncertainty. It was remarkable how a retired dog, years removed from active duty, could still read the intensity of a situation like this, detect danger invisible to humans, and communicate it silently. Then it happened. Lily made a more pronounced gesture, raising her hand, thumb tucked, fingers folded, and held it steadily. Ranger reacted instantly, a low growl turning into a bark that could not be ignored. Daniel knew it was time to alert the troopers with specifics: the child's repeated gestures, the man's nervous behavior, and the vehicle's license plate. He spoke into his phone quietly, calmly, narrating the details. "The child is signaling for help," he said. "It's deliberate. Something is very wrong." The SUV approached an overpass, and Daniel noticed the man glancing up at the oncoming traffic, tense, almost paranoid. He muttered something inaudible, frowning, hands clenched. Lily shrank into her seat, pressing the rabbit tightly. She whispered to herself, "Please see me," hoping that anyone would notice. Across the lanes, Ranger's gaze never wavered. His body stiffened. He was ready to act at a moment's notice. As the overpass loomed, Daniel realized that the rest stop incident had now escalated into a full-blown pursuit scenario. But this was unlike the high-speed chases he remembered from his career. The stakes were deeply personal, human, and fragile. Ranger's instincts were unmatched. His subtle signals, pawing, growling, shifting weight, communicated what words could not. Daniel's heart pounded, but he trusted his partner completely. Together, they were ready to ensure Lily's safety. The SUV moved into the distance, but Daniel, guided by Ranger's keen senses, stayed focused. The child's courage had set everything in motion. A hand signal, almost invisible to others, had been enough to awaken a retired K-9's instincts, draw a former deputy into action, and connect to authorities. Every second was critical. Every mile mattered. And the highway, bustling and indifferent, now carried a story that could change lives forever. In that moment, Daniel and Ranger were not just observers, they were protectors. And Lily, with her small hand and quiet bravery, had begun a chain of events that would alter everything. The gray SUV sped along Interstate 75, weaving between cars and trucks, tires humming over the asphalt in a rhythm that made Daniel's chest tighten. The sun had dipped lower, casting long golden streaks across the lanes, shimmering off the metal of passing vehicles. Inside the SUV, Lily's tiny fingers gripped the worn edges of her stuffed rabbit. She whispered to it, almost as if it could hear her words, "Please see me. Please help me." The man beside her didn't notice, or maybe he didn't care. His eyes darted nervously to mirrors, to passing vehicles, to the faint glimmer of the highway beyond. Daniel's hands were firm on Ranger's leash, steady despite the adrenaline pulsing through him. The retired K-9 leaned forward slightly, alert, muscles coiled, eyes sharp and unwavering. Ranger had served with him for years in the Cobb County Sheriff's Office, trained for high-stakes pursuits, threat detection, and protective instincts. Though retired, Ranger's senses were intact, keen as ever. He sniffed the air, detecting fear, tension, and subtle danger. Every subtle motion Lily made, every flinch of the man's hand on the wheel, every shallow breath, all of it registered in Ranger's trained awareness. The dispatcher's voice crackled over Daniel's phone headset. "Troopers are 20 miles out. Maintain visual, report any sudden moves. Do not engage the vehicle yourself." Daniel nodded, though she couldn't see him. He adjusted his speed to stay close but not too close, letting Ranger guide him. The dog's body language was precise. Ears forward, tail rigid, paw tapping occasionally at the asphalt, a silent command that demanded vigilance. Inside the SUV, Lily shifted in her seat, trying to make herself smaller. Her curls fell across her forehead, damp from nervous sweat. She had already made the hand signal twice since leaving the rest stop, but fear made her repeat it again, this time more deliberately. She had no way of knowing that Ranger, the retired police dog, was already observing her, assessing the situation and preparing to act. She just hoped someone would notice. The man driving muttered under his breath, his jaw tight, "Stay quiet. Don't make a sound." He glanced in the rearview mirror again, and his eyes widened slightly as Daniel's vehicle appeared behind them. Lily's small hands clenched her rabbit tighter, pressing it against her chest as if it could shield her from the danger surrounding her. Daniel kept his eyes fixed on the SUV, heart pounding. He had faced dangerous chases before, but this one was different. A child was involved, innocent and vulnerable, trapped in a vehicle with a man whose behavior radiated tension and unease. Every instinct told Daniel that intervention might be needed sooner rather than later. Ranger's low growl, almost a whisper under the hum of traffic, confirmed the urgency. The SUV swerved slightly to avoid a slow-moving truck, and Daniel noticed how Lily flinched at every sudden movement. Her small body trembled, tiny fists tightening around her rabbit. Ranger barked softly, a controlled, low sound that Daniel understood perfectly, danger imminent. Daniel whispered, "Stay calm, Ranger. We need patience right now." The dog's eyes never left Lily, ears still forward, muscles taut as steel springs. As they approached a gentle curve in the highway, the SUV's speed increased. The man's impatience was evident, foot tapping hard on the accelerator. His glances to the rearview mirror were frantic, erratic. Daniel noted every detail, the way the man's knuckles whitened on the wheel, the repeated flicks of his eyes toward the road edges, the subtle shifts of Lily's tiny hands. Each movement told a story, a narrative of fear and desperation. Then Lily did something bold. She raised her small hand, thumb tucked, fingers folded, holding it steady for several seconds. Daniel's chest tightened as Ranger's growl turned into a clear bark, alert and insistent. Daniel spoke into his headset. The child is signaling for help again. The gesture is deliberate. The driver is controlling her hands. The vehicle is moving erratically. I repeat, the child is in distress. Dispatch responded quickly, relaying his information to state troopers along the route. Troopers are approaching. Maintain visual until they reach you. Do not take any direct action unless absolutely necessary. Daniel nodded. He felt the familiar weight of responsibility. Retired or not, this was his call, his duty, and he would not let Lily down. Ranger pressed closer to his side, ready to act, silent and vigilant. The SUV's driver glanced toward Daniel's vehicle for the first time and swore under his breath. He swerved slightly, trying to create distance, weaving between lanes. Traffic thickened, trucks and cars slowing, forcing sudden adjustments. Daniel stayed calm, careful to mirror Ranger's guidance, maintaining a safe distance but never losing sight. Ranger sniffed the air, detecting subtle sense of fear, stress, and urgency. The dog's every movement communicated more than words could. Stay alert. Time is critical. Minutes stretched like hours. Lily pressed her rabbit against her chest and whispered again, "Help me." She didn't know Daniel was tracking them or that Ranger, trained to detect danger and protect, was already engaged. She only knew she had to keep signaling, keep trying, hope someone noticed. Her courage was tiny but potent, a flickering beacon in a dangerous storm. Daniel noticed a small shift in the man's behavior. His breathing had grown more rapid. He tapped the wheel nervously, muttering phrases under his breath. The SUV slowed slightly behind a large semi-truck, forcing him to navigate carefully. Lily's small hands fidgeted, repeating the hand gesture almost instinctively, each movement desperate, pleading. Ranger's body twitched with each motion, reading every micro-expression, every subtle shift of tension in both Lily and the man. Daniel's mind raced through his options. Intervention would have to wait for troopers, but observation, reporting, and careful positioning could make all the difference. Ranger's presence was both a comfort and a warning. The dog's instincts had never failed him, and Daniel trusted them implicitly. Every signal Ranger gave, every subtle bark, every shift of weight, communicated the gravity of the situation. As the SUV began to approach an overpass, Daniel saw the man glance upward nervously, almost as if seeking escape. Lily made the gesture once more, holding it carefully for a moment before lowering her tiny hand, trembling. Ranger barked sharply, low and urgent, as if saying, "This is serious. Act soon." Daniel's pulse raced, but he kept control, keeping Ranger calm and alert, observing every second. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the highway, golden streaks illuminating the vehicle in motion. Daniel kept his distance but never lost sight, eyes glued to Lily's every movement. She pressed her rabbit tightly, repeating her silent plea. Ranger's ears twitched with every flicker of motion. Daniel could feel the tension in the air, thick and electric. The highway stretched ahead, vehicles moving like a river, oblivious to the drama unfolding. But Daniel and Ranger were fully engaged, their focus absolute. Lily's courage, her small, silent signals had triggered a chain reaction, a retired K-9's instincts, a former deputy's vigilance, and the slow approach of law enforcement. Every second mattered. Every move could be the difference between safety and tragedy. As the SUV disappeared slightly around a bend, Daniel whispered to Ranger, "Stay focused. We've got her." Ranger pressed closer, eyes bright, muscles coiled like a spring ready to release. Lily's tiny hands had spoken louder than words ever could, and now the real chase had begun. The rest stop was behind them. The open road ahead carried danger, but also hope. The afternoon sun had dipped closer to the horizon, casting long shadows over Interstate 75. The gray SUV swerved slightly in the heavy traffic, weaving between trucks and cars, tires humming over the asphalt. Daniel Brooks kept his distance, eyes glued to the vehicle. Ranger at his side, muscles coiled like steel springs, followed Lily's every movement. The dog's ears flicked with every sound, tires skidding, brakes squealing, faint sobs that escaped the child's chest. He had detected danger countless times in his working years. Now, though retired, His instincts were sharper than ever. Behind them, the faint, distant blue lights of Georgia State Patrol began to shimmer in the rearview mirror. Daniel felt a mix of relief and tension. Troopers were finally closing the distance, but the man driving the SUV was clearly nervous. He glanced repeatedly in his rearview mirror, jaw tight, eyes darting back and forth as if calculating escape routes. Every muscle in his body radiated tension. Inside the SUV, Lily's small hands clenched her stuffed rabbit tightly. She had tried to stay invisible to make herself as small as possible, but the approaching lights meant her silent plea had reached the right people. Her thumb tucked, fingers folded, a desperate signal repeated once more. Ranger's eyes locked onto her, reading her fear, her courage, and her unspoken message. He gave a soft, low growl, alerting Daniel that the moment of crisis was arriving. The man noticed the flashing lights and panicked. He accelerated, trying to maneuver through traffic, tires squealing faintly. Lily flinched as the car jerked sideways, pressed against the seat, whispering to herself, "Please see me." Her voice was tiny, almost drowned by the roar of the engine and the surrounding traffic, but Daniel and Ranger were attuned to every subtle sound, every micro-expression. Daniel spoke quietly into his phone headset, giving precise updates to the dispatcher. SUV heading southbound, weaving through traffic, driver accelerating, child is visibly distressed, repeating the hand signal, troopers are approaching. He kept his voice calm, professional, masking the adrenaline that coursed through his body. Ranger tugged slightly at the leash, signaling his readiness, ears flicking toward every movement. The highway became congested as evening commuters moved toward exits and ramps. Trucks loomed large, and cars zipped between lanes unpredictably. The man's driving grew erratic. Every glance in the rearview mirror revealed rising panic. He muttered to himself, voice sharp and anxious. Lily's small frame trembled slightly as the SUV swerved around a slow semi. The stuffed rabbit pressed to her chest became a lifeline, the only anchor in a sea of danger. Troopers moved quickly, coordinating over the radio. Multiple units converged, strategically positioning themselves to intercept. Daniel kept his vehicle at a careful distance, letting Ranger guide him. The dog's eyes never left Lily. Every subtle twitch of her fingers, every shiver, every blink communicated urgency. Ranger's low growl intensified, almost warning that the situation was escalating beyond normal pursuit. The SUV tried to exit abruptly onto a secondary ramp. Its tires screeched as the man accelerated sharply, cutting dangerously close to the guardrails. Daniel adjusted his speed, careful not to alarm the driver, letting Ranger maintain focus on Lily. The dispatcher's voice came again. "Troopers are 3 minutes out. Maintain visual, keep your distance. Do not engage directly." Daniel nodded silently. He trusted Ranger implicitly. The dog had never been wrong in moments like this. Inside the SUV, Lily pressed herself further into her seat, repeating the hand signal subtly, desperately every few seconds. Her wide eyes darted from the man to the road, then to the approaching lights. Her voice was barely a whisper, but she muttered, "Help me, please," hoping someone would understand. Ranger's ears flicked toward her, sensing her fear as though it were a physical presence. The dog's body tensed, ready for the precise moment to act. As the SUV approached an overpass, the man's panic became visible. He muttered phrases under his breath, jaw tight, hands gripping the wheel like claws. Traffic slowed near the exit ramp, forcing him to maneuver carefully. Lily's small hand trembled with every movement, then raised slightly in her familiar gesture. Ranger reacted immediately, giving a soft, controlled bark. Daniel whispered, "Stay ready, buddy. Troopers are almost there." The dog's body coiled, tail stiff, eyes unwavering. The troopers' vehicles appeared in the distance, weaving into position, engines loud but coordinated. The man's panic spiked as he realized he couldn't escape. He swerved abruptly to avoid a slow-moving truck, tires skidding faintly across the asphalt. Lily pressed herself against the seat, hiding her tiny body, but continued her silent plea with a subtle hand gesture. Ranger's gaze never wavered, reading every movement, anticipating every risk. Daniel's heart pounded as he maintained a steady distance. He had pursued vehicles before, but this was different. A child's life was at stake. Every second mattered. Every micro-movement counted. Ranger growled low and then barked, signaling the exact moment of imminent danger. The dog's instincts, honed over years of service, were now guiding Daniel, keeping Lily's small gestures in focus and communicating the urgency of the moment. The SUV slowed slightly near a bend, traffic forcing careful navigation. The man's eyes darted frantically, lips pressing together, shoulders tense. Lily pressed her rabbit to her chest, repeating the hand signal with subtle persistence. Ranger gave a sharp bark again, his body alert, muscles taut, eyes locked on her. Daniel adjusted his position, keeping a precise distance. Every motion, every twitch, every signal counted. Finally, the SUV entered a stretch of highway with a clear shoulder. Daniel noticed the man's agitation growing uncontrollable. He muttered, glancing in every direction, trying to calculate escape routes, hands trembling slightly on the wheel. Lily's small hands continued the gesture, repeated 3 times in quick succession. Ranger barked again, low but insistent, alerting Daniel that the critical moment was approaching. The troopers, now closer, signaled with lights and sirens, positioning to intercept. The man realized he couldn't avoid them. Panic made his driving erratic, weaving slightly between lanes. Lily pressed herself against the seat, murmuring quietly to her rabbit, "Please see me." Daniel's pulse raced, but he stayed composed, trusting Ranger's instincts. The dog's sharp gaze, low growl, and controlled body language were guiding him, indicating exactly when to act and how to keep the child safe. As the SUV approached a straight stretch with clear visibility, the situation reached a critical point. The man's eyes widened, realizing escape was impossible. Lily's small hand raised again in the secret signal, precise and desperate. Ranger barked sharply, almost like a warning, and Daniel readied himself for the trooper's intervention. Every second felt like an eternity. Every movement was amplified by the tension of the highway, the approaching officers, and the child's quiet courage. The moment of confrontation was imminent. The SUV slowed slightly, trapped between lanes, with troopers in position behind and beside. Lily's small hands remained raised, her signal unwavering. Ranger's muscles coiled, eyes fixed, growling softly, sensing every nuance of danger. Daniel's hands gripped the leash firmly, his body poised to assist if necessary. The rest stopped, the highway, the traffic. All were now part of a tense, orchestrated scene where courage, instinct, and timing would determine the outcome. And then, in a tense symphony of light, sound, and motion, the chase reached the point of confrontation. The troopers were moments away, the SUV's driver cornered, and Lily's silent bravery was about to be recognized. Ranger's instincts had led them here, and Daniel knew that every careful observation, every signal from the child, and every step of the dog had been crucial. What happened next would change lives forever. The gray SUV had slowed, boxed in by troopers from the Georgia State Patrol. Red and blue lights flashed across the asphalt, reflecting on the metal and glass of passing vehicles. Inside, Lily pressed herself against her booster seat, holding her stuffed rabbit like a shield. She repeated the secret hand gesture one last time, her small fingers trembling. Her eyes were wide, searching for someone, anyone, who could understand that she needed help. Ranger's nostrils flared, sniffing the air with intensity. His trained senses picked up something subtle but alarming, the faint scent of sweat, fear, and something else, metal and fabric, that suggested there was more than just a frightened child inside the SUV. He circled the vehicle slowly, low growl rumbling in his throat. Daniel's pulse quickened. He knew the retired K-9's instincts never failed. When Ranger acted, it was always for a reason. The driver's body language had shifted as well. Panic radiated from every tense muscle, every twitch of the jaw. He muttered under his breath, glancing around for a possible escape, oblivious to the troopers surrounding him. Lily's small body trembled. She whispered again, "Please see me," pressing the rabbit tightly. Ranger's ears flicked at the sound, and he pawed the ground near the rear tires, signaling that something was hidden there, something that required immediate attention. Daniel spoke quietly to the nearby trooper. Permission to let Ranger inspect the vehicle. He's trained, retired, but extremely reliable. There's something unusual at the back. The trooper nodded, wary but trusting the expertise of a former K-9 officer and his partner. Ranger padded toward the rear of the SUV, nose low, muscles tensed, tail stiff. Every instinct screamed, danger inside. He stopped near the trunk, scratching at the metal with his paw and letting out a low, controlled bark. The troopers opened the trunk carefully. Inside were several items that immediately drew concern: bags with personal belongings, some medical supplies, and objects that suggested someone had been concealed or transported against their will. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. Ranger's low growl intensified, confirming the suspicion. This was not a simple roadside panic. The child's hand signal had not been in vain. Lily pressed herself further into her seat, tiny hands gripping the rabbit, eyes wide as officers moved around the SUV. The man's calm facade had crumbled. Beads of sweat glistened on his forehead. He tried to mutter explanations, but his words were jumbled, meaningless. Ranger sniffed the trunk again, then barked, low but urgent, signaling the presence of someone else, someone in danger. Daniel's mind raced. Could Lily's mother be nearby? Could she be the one in trouble? Troopers radioed for backup, confirming the discovery in the trunk. "We have potential evidence suggesting an abducted adult," one officer reported. Daniel's heart thumped. Lily had not just been in danger herself, her mother might also be at risk. Ranger pawed again at the rear bumper, nose working tirelessly. He had detected every subtle trace of human presence, fear, and distress. The retired K-9 had reactivated in full force, ready to guide the authorities to a rescue. The man driving the SUV grew desperate, packing slightly, trying to form an explanation. His eyes darted between Lily, the troopers, and Daniel. Lily's small fingers lifted in the secret hand signal once more, barely perceptible but unwavering. Ranger growled sharply, barking again, reinforcing that this was no ordinary roadside stop. Daniel could feel the tension radiating from the vehicle. He whispered to the trooper closest, "She's signaling. The child is trying to communicate that someone else is in danger. Trust the dog." The troopers carefully removed items from the trunk. Among them, they discovered more compelling evidence: personal belongings clearly belonging to Lily's mother, signs of forced concealment, and medical items suggesting she had been injured or restrained. Daniel's chest tightened. Time was critical. Ranger sniffed at a small fabric edge protruding slightly from a hidden compartment and pawed insistently. The officers moved quickly, following his lead. Daniel glanced at Lily. She was pale but alert, repeating her hand signal subtly, keeping her eyes on the officers. Her tiny courage had brought them to this moment. Without her silent signals, without Ranger's keen instincts, they might never have uncovered the truth in time. Daniel felt a surge of admiration for her bravery. She was only 3 years old, yet her awareness and courage were remarkable. The man's panic escalated further. He stuttered, his voice rising. I didn't, she's fine, nothing's wrong." But his eyes betrayed him. The authorities were trained to read more than words. They watched posture, micro-expressions, and tension. Ranger's presence amplified their observations. Every low growl, every pawing motion communicated truth beyond the man's lies. Finally, a trooper carefully opened a hidden compartment in the rear of the SUV. Inside was clear evidence that Lily's mother had been restrained and transported against her will. The woman was not there physically, she had been moved earlier, but the items confirmed she had been abducted. Ranger sniffed intently at the remaining traces of her scent, tail stiff, muscles ready. Daniel's stomach twisted. They had found evidence. Now they had to act fast to locate her. The man slumped slightly, realizing he had no options. Troopers began questioning him carefully, not provoking him further but gathering information. Lily remained seated, clutching her rabbit, small hands folded in the secret hand gesture she had repeated over and over. She didn't fully understand what had just happened, but sensed the relief and attention directed at her signals. Ranger remained vigilant, guarding her with every fiber of his being. Daniel communicated with the troopers, providing information about the route the SUV had taken, the direction of the scent, and Ranger's observations. "She's close. The mother," he said. Ranger's picking up a trail that's fresh, probably within the last hour. We need to move now. The officers acted immediately, coordinating a search in nearby wooded areas and along secondary roads. Time was critical. Every second could mean the difference between rescue and tragedy. Ranger's instincts were extraordinary. Even retired, the dog worked seamlessly with Daniel and the authorities, reading subtle cues, detecting faint human scents, and identifying areas of potential concealment. His low growls and controlled barks guided the search team, indicating where to focus. Lily watched quietly, understanding on some deep level that her signals had worked. She had communicated danger without words, and now her mother's rescue depended on the combined efforts of instinct, courage, and trained professionals. The SUV had been neutralized as a threat, but the investigation was far from over. Officers began tracing the route using GPS, witness reports, and evidence from the vehicle. Ranger sniffed along the edges, occasionally nudging Daniel or a trooper toward a hidden path or subtle trace of human movement. The child's courage, paired with the dog's unparalleled instincts, had turned a simple roadside stop into a coordinated rescue operation. Daniel watched Lily, her small figure tense but brave. She had been the first to act, silently signaling for help. Without her, Ranger would not have been alerted, and the authorities might not have had the information they needed. Her bravery, combined with the K9's instincts and Daniel's calm vigilance, had transformed a dangerous scenario into an opportunity to save a life. Finally, a trooper radioed, "We have a trail. Fresh tracks leading toward the wooded area near the exit." Daniel nodded to Ranger. The dog's tail wagged slightly, ears forward, ready to lead the search. Lily clutched her rabbit, tiny hands folded in the signal one last time, as if giving encouragement to the team. Her courage had sparked the entire rescue, and now the search for her mother was underway. The SUV had been neutralized, the driver restrained, evidence gathered, and thanks to the 3-year-old's silent bravery and Ranger's unparalleled instincts, a trail had been identified. Time was still critical, but hope had returned. Lily's courage, the dog's training, and Daniel's experience had converged perfectly. The next steps would be decisive. The mother's life and the child's future depended on every careful move. Ranger barked sharply, signaling the direction of the trail. Daniel adjusted the leash, nodding to the officers. The search teams moved quickly, following the retired K9's guidance. Lily's small figure remained seated, clutching her rabbit, a quiet symbol of courage and hope amidst the chaos. The scene had shifted from confrontation to active rescue, a high-stakes operation guided by instinct, experience, and bravery beyond measure. In that moment, Daniel realized something profound. Courage wasn't limited by age or size. Lily had demonstrated bravery beyond her years. Ranger had embodied loyalty and instinct, and together they had turned a desperate situation into a chance to save a life. The highway, the SUV, and the flashing lights were now only part of a larger story, a story of courage, intuition, and hope in the face of danger. The wooded area just off the exit ramp was dense, filled with thick underbrush and towering pines, shadows stretching long as the late afternoon sun sank behind the horizon. The air smelled of damp earth and pine needles, a stark contrast to the asphalt of Interstate 75 where the SUV had been stopped. Daniel Brooks crouched low, Ranger at his side, ears forward, muscles coiled. The dog's nose twitched constantly, picking up the faint, lingering scent of Lily's mother. The officers moved carefully, flashlights cutting through the dimming light. Each step was deliberate, branches snapped easily, and the terrain was uneven. Lily watched from a safe distance, pressed against a trooper's side, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She had already signaled multiple times, tiny fingers folded in the secret gesture, signaling that her mother was out there and in danger. Every instinct told Daniel that the child's bravery had set this rescue in motion. Ranger paused suddenly, nose to the ground, tail stiff, growl low and warning. Daniel crouched beside him, whispering, "Got it, buddy, lead the way." The dog darted forward with controlled energy, sniffing a faint trail that disappeared into the thicker part of the woods. Daniel followed, keeping pace, officers close behind. The sounds of the highway faded, replaced by rustling leaves and the occasional distant call of a bird, but the tension was palpable. Every second mattered. Lily's small hands trembled slightly, but her eyes followed Ranger's movements. She whispered to her rabbit, "Mommy, please be safe." Her voice was barely audible, but Daniel felt the weight of it. The child's courage, her persistence in signaling, and her unwavering hope had been the catalyst for the rescue. Ranger's low growl indicated they were close. Daniel signaled to the troopers to advance carefully, ready for anything. The trail led them deeper into the woods, where the underbrush grew denser. Ranger's movements became sharper, more precise, paws moving carefully to avoid noise but eyes locked on the faint scent trail. Daniel and the officers moved cautiously, aware that the suspect could have left traps or hidden weapons. Every shadow seemed to hold potential danger, every rustle a warning. But the dog's confidence reassured them. Ranger had detected a human scent, and it was recent. Suddenly, Ranger stopped near a cluster of fallen branches and bark-covered logs. His nose was low to the ground, growl vibrating in his throat. Daniel crouched beside him, peering into the dim space. There, partially concealed beneath a large fallen log, was a small bundle moving slightly. The officers froze. Daniel whispered, "Could be her. Everyone stay sharp." Ranger's tail wagged slightly, a controlled signal that the person was alive but likely frightened or injured. The officers carefully approached, moving branches aside. And then they saw her, Lily's mother. Her clothes were disheveled, smudged with dirt and leaves, a faint bruise visible on her cheek. Her eyes widened as she saw the officers and Daniel approaching, and then recognition and relief flooded her face. "Lily," she whispered, voice trembling, crawling toward the sound of her daughter's signal. Ranger barked softly, tail wagging, stepping back to allow the reunion. Lily's small legs carried her forward, and she threw herself into her mother's arms, hugging her tightly. Tears streamed down both faces. The stuffed rabbit pressed between them like a silent witness to the ordeal. Daniel felt a rush of relief. Ranger's growls softened, tail wagging more freely, ears relaxed. The danger had passed for now, but vigilance remained as the officers ensured the area was clear and secure. The suspect's car had been secured, and troopers were already taking statements over the radio. The man was in custody, restrained, his panic evident as he realized his escape had failed. Lily's mother hugged her daughter tightly, whispering reassurances, her voice shaking but steady. "I'm here. I'm safe now. Thanks to you." Her eyes met Daniel's, gratitude overwhelming. He nodded, letting Ranger's instinct-driven guidance take the credit it deserved. As backup arrived, the team began to carefully lead Lily and her mother out of the woods toward safety. Daniel stayed close, Ranger by his side, alert for any unforeseen threats. Every step forward was slow but deliberate, ensuring both women remained protected. Lily's tiny hand remained folded in the secret signal as she glanced back at Ranger, almost as if thanking him for his role in the rescue. The dog's calm gaze seemed to acknowledge her bravery, recognizing her courage and the pivotal role she had played. Once they reached the clearing near the highway, paramedics took over, checking both Lily and her mother for injuries, offering blankets and water. The mother's relief was palpable. She held her daughter close, whispering softly, tears streaming down her face. Lily, exhausted but unafraid now, hugged her rabbit and smiled weakly, her silent signals having transformed into visible triumph. Ranger's ears twitched, still alert, watching every movement, ready to respond if danger reemerged. Daniel watched the reunion, heart pounding with relief. "You did it, kid," he whispered to Lily, kneeling slightly to meet her gaze. "Your signal saved the day. Your bravery got help here." Lily's eyes sparkled, a mixture of pride and relief. She hugged her rabbit tighter, understanding in her own way that her small actions had monumental consequences. Ranger barked softly, tail wagging as if in agreement. Troopers secured the area, taking detailed notes and evidence from the SUV. They coordinated with local authorities to ensure the mother's safety and investigate the suspect's motives fully. Daniel stayed nearby, offering information about the route, the hand signals, and Ranger's observations. The collaboration of human intuition, canine instinct, and child bravery had turned a dangerous situation into a successful rescue operation. As the evening settled over the highway, Lily and her mother were finally escorted to a safe location. Paramedics ensured they were both unharmed, except for minor scrapes and bruises. The mother held Lily close, whispering reassurances, repeating phrases of gratitude over and over. Lily's silent courage, repeated hand signals, and unwavering hope had sparked a rescue that would be remembered by all involved. Daniel looked down at Ranger, now relaxed but still alert, tail swishing gently. "Good job, buddy," he said. Ranger nudged Daniel's leg with his nose, acknowledging the praise but already scanning for any lingering threats. The bond between retired K9 and former deputy was undeniable, strengthened by years of service and moments like this, where instinct and courage combined to save a life. The highway, once just a stretch of asphalt buzzing with commuters, had become the stage for a story of bravery, instinct, and human connection. Lily, a 3-year-old girl, had signaled for help in silence, and her courage had led to the discovery of her abducted mother and the eventual rescue. Ranger, though retired, had acted instinctively, guiding the authorities with precision and focus. And Daniel, experienced and vigilant, had ensured the safety of both child and mother. By the time night fell, the immediate danger had passed. Lily and her mother were safe, embraced in the warm glow of relief, while Ranger and Daniel remained vigilant until the area was completely secure. The highway had witnessed terror, bravery, and the seamless collaboration between humans and a dog whose instincts had never failed. The story of a tiny hand signal, a stuffed rabbit, and a retired K9 would echo far beyond that stretch of interstate. The sun had fully set, leaving a cool, quiet darkness over Interstate 75. The highway, once filled with the roar of engines and tires, was now eerily calm. Emergency vehicles had parked strategically along the shoulder, their lights casting blue and red reflections on the asphalt. Officers moved deliberately, collecting evidence from the abandoned SUV, noting tire marks and photographing the scene. Daniel Brooks stood nearby, Ranger at his side, both of them quietly observing the debrief in progress. Lily sat wrapped in a blanket on a folding chair set up by troopers, clutching her stuffed rabbit tightly. Her small face was pale but calm, eyes wide with lingering fear and wonder. Her mother knelt beside her, brushing her daughter's curls from her forehead, whispering reassurances over and over. "It's okay now, sweetheart, you're safe. We're safe," she said, voice trembling with relief. Lily's secret hand signal, repeated countless times in fear and hope, had changed everything. Daniel's mind replayed the events of the day. The rest stop, the subtle hand signals, Ranger's instincts, the SUV pursuit, the troopers' arrival, and finally, the rescue in the woods. It had all unfolded like a high-stakes operation, yet it was anchored in the courage of a 3-year-old girl and a retired K9. Ranger's ears twitched, tail swishing lightly, but he remained alert, ready for any unexpected threat. Daniel gave him a nod of approval, the silent acknowledgement passing between human and dog. Troopers gathered for a debrief, noting the details of the case. Statements were taken from Daniel, Lily, and the mother. Each officer's face showed a mixture of relief and admiration. "The child's signals were instrumental," one trooper noted. "Without them, we might not have located the mother so quickly." Daniel nodded silently, proud but calm. Ranger had been equally crucial, guiding the search with precision and instincts honed over years of service. The combination of child, dog, and human expertise had ensured success. Lily's mother finally allowed herself a moment to breathe, her hands trembling as she held her daughter close. "I didn't know how to help her," she admitted softly, "but she kept signaling. I can't believe she did that." Lily looked up at her mother, still clutching the rabbit. "I wanted to help," she whispered. Her mother smiled through tears, holding her tightly. That small, silent gesture, the secret hand signal, had communicated danger when words could not. It had sparked the chain of events that saved her. Daniel walked over to Lily, kneeling to meet her small eyes. "You were incredibly brave," he said gently. "Your signals, your courage, it all mattered. You helped save your mom." Lily's eyes lit up, a mixture of pride and exhaustion. Ranger nudged Daniel's leg with his nose, tail wagging slightly as if affirming the praise. The dog had recognized the bravery in Lily long before Daniel spoke. The unspoken bond between child and K9, based on trust and instinct, had been a driving force in the rescue. The mother spoke with one of the troopers, recounting details of the abduction, explaining how she had been restrained and transported. Her voice trembled but remained steady, determined to provide crucial information. Daniel observed quietly, offering details about the route the SUV had taken and the signs Ranger had detected. Every detail mattered, every clue pieced together the story that would be used to hold the perpetrator accountable. As the officers worked, Daniel noticed Lily staring at Ranger wide-eyed. "He helped me," she said softly, pointing to the dog. Ranger responded with a gentle tail wag, eyes bright, ears flicking. Daniel smiled. "Yes, buddy, he was part of this team too," he said. Ranger had guided the search, alerted to danger, and stayed vigilant, ensuring the child and her mother were safe. The retired K9 had proven that training and instinct endure, even after years away from active duty. Later, a detective approached Daniel. "We'll need a full report from you and Ranger," he said. "Your observations, the trail, the signals, it's all crucial for the case." Daniel nodded. He knew the investigation would continue long after the immediate rescue. Evidence from the SUV, the abduction, and the mother's account would be pivotal. Ranger, sitting patiently beside him, seemed to sense the gravity of the moment, remaining alert yet calm. The mother finally hugged Daniel tightly, whispering her gratitude. "I can't thank you enough. You and him," she said, gesturing to Ranger. "My daughter and I are alive because of both of you." Daniel nodded, humbled. "You were brave too," he replied. "Your daughter's signals made the difference. Ranger and I just followed her lead." Lily pressed the rabbit to her chest, a small smile on her face, understanding that her actions, though tiny, had monumental impact. Troopers began clearing the scene, ensuring the highway was safe for commuters. Daniel and Ranger remained for a moment, watching the operations wrap up. "Good job, buddy," Daniel whispered, patting Ranger's head. The dog nudged his hand, tail wagging gently, acknowledging the praise but maintaining his alertness. Even in retirement, Ranger's instincts and vigilance had remained intact. As the mother and daughter were escorted to a safe location, Daniel walked slowly back to his vehicle. The night was quiet, the highway now clear except for emergency vehicles departing. Ranger stayed at his side, alert but calm. The retired K9 had guided them through danger, and the 3-year-old's courage had sparked it all. The events of the day had proven that bravery and instinct, no matter the source, could change lives. Back at the patrol station, Daniel completed his detailed report. He described every aspect: the hand signals, Ranger's responses, the SUV pursuit, and the woods search. Each detail mattered, from the smallest twitch of Lily's fingers to the precise moment Ranger indicated the hidden trail. The case would be used for training, highlighting how observation, courage, and instinct intersect in life-threatening situations. Later, as Daniel prepared to leave, he glanced at Ranger, who sat obediently beside him. The dog's ears twitched, eyes alert, tail swishing lightly. "We did good today," Daniel said softly. Ranger barked once, almost as if affirming the statement. Together, they had witnessed fear, courage, and relief, a complete arc of danger and salvation. Lily's tiny hand gestures had sparked a sequence of events that would forever be remembered by all involved. Lily and her mother were safe, thanks to the perfect combination of human vigilance, canine instincts, and child bravery. The evening air was cool, carrying with it a sense of resolution. But Daniel knew the story wouldn't end here. The investigation, the healing, and the lessons learned would continue. Ranger remained by his side, a silent guardian, ever vigilant, ever ready. That night, as Daniel and Ranger drove slowly down the quiet highway, he reflected on the events of the day. A 3-year-old girl, using subtle hand gestures, had changed the course of a dangerous situation. A retired police dog had read the faintest signs of fear and danger, guiding authorities precisely when it mattered most. And trained professionals had acted decisively, ensuring safety and justice. Courage, instinct and teamwork had saved lives. In the quiet aftermath, Daniel realized something profound. Heroes come in all shapes and sizes. A small child, a retired dog, and a vigilant former deputy had combined forces to prevent tragedy. Ranger's eyes met Daniel's, calm but attentive, and Daniel felt a surge of pride. Together, they had ensured that bravery, no matter how quiet or small, was never ignored. The night stretched ahead, silent yet full of promise, carrying the quiet triumph of courage, instinct, and hope. The night had fully settled over Interstate 75. Streetlights cast a soft glow over the empty lanes, painting long shadows across the asphalt. The chaos of the day, the SUV chase, flashing lights, frantic pursuit, and tense search, had faded, replaced by a calm sense of relief and reflection. Lily and her mother were safe, taken to a secure location where they could rest, recover, and begin the healing process. Daniel Brooks sat on a bench outside the temporary command post, Ranger at his side, tail swishing gently. The retired K9 had spent the entire day alert, vigilant, yet remarkably composed. Even in retirement, Ranger's instincts remained razor-sharp. Daniel brushed his hand over the dog's back. "We did good today, buddy," he whispered. Ranger nudged his leg softly, a silent acknowledgement of their shared victory. It had been a long day, but a life-saving one. The mother held Lily close, wrapping her in a blanket. Tears streaked her face, a mix of relief, gratitude, and lingering shock. "I don't even know how to thank you," she said softly, voice trembling. "My daughter, she saved us." Lily clutched her stuffed rabbit, small fingers folded in the secret hand gesture one final time, as if quietly asserting that her courage had mattered. It had been her bravery that had started the chain of events that led to this moment. Daniel reflected on the sequence of events. The rest stopped where Lily first made the signal, Ranger detecting the faint traces of fear and danger, the SUV pursuit, and the search through the woods. Each element was crucial, each decision precise. A retired K9, a trained deputy, and a courageous 3-year-old had combined to prevent a tragedy. The thought struck him: heroes don't always wear badges. Sometimes they are small children or silent partners like Ranger, whose instincts guide action when words cannot. Troopers were wrapping up at the scene, filing reports and securing evidence from the SUV. The suspect had been taken into custody, his plans thwarted, and investigators had gathered everything necessary to pursue prosecution. Yet the human story, the reunion of mother and child, the bravery of Lily, and the instinctive guidance of Ranger, remained the heart of this event. It was a testament to courage, observation, and decisive action. The mother finally lifted her gaze from Lily. "She kept signaling," she whispered. "I didn't even know what she was doing at first, but she never stopped. She was trying to save me." Lily looked up at her, a small smile forming through tears. "I wanted to help, Mommy," she said softly. The simplicity of the statement carried profound weight. In her small hands and subtle signals, she had communicated danger, hope, and trust. Daniel approached the mother and daughter slowly. "Your daughter was incredible," he said gently. "She didn't even know the full danger, but she recognized fear and acted. That small gesture, your secret hand signal, it saved you both." Ranger sat attentively beside him, eyes bright, ears twitching as if understanding the praise. Lily reached out, gently patting Ranger's head. The dog leaned into her touch, tail swishing lightly. There was an unspoken bond formed that day between child and K9. In the following hours, local authorities conducted debriefs. Daniel provided detailed accounts of Ranger's behavior, the child's hand signals, and the events leading to the rescue. Each description mattered. Ranger had sniffed out the faintest traces of the mother's presence, guided Daniel and the troopers, and remained calm under extreme pressure. Lily's repeated hand gestures had conveyed urgency and danger beyond what words could communicate. Together, they had demonstrated how courage and instinct could align to create extraordinary outcomes. Later, the mother spoke with Daniel privately, holding Lily's hand. "I've never been more proud of her," she said softly. "She was so small, yet she was so brave, and Ranger, I can't even describe how amazing he was." Daniel nodded. "It's teamwork, instinct, courage, and careful observation. It all matters. Today, all three of you worked together without even realizing it." Lily's mother nodded, tears forming again. "We owe our lives to all of you," she whispered. As the night deepened, Daniel and Ranger walked back to their vehicle. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine from the nearby woods. Daniel glanced at Ranger, tail swishing gently, eyes alert but calm. "Another day done," he said softly. "Another life saved." Ranger barked once, almost as if agreeing. Daniel reflected on the day, on how small gestures, careful observation, and courage, even from the youngest participants, could change everything. Back at home later that evening, Daniel sat quietly with Ranger by his side, reviewing the events in his mind. Every micro-detail, every hand signal, every sniff from Ranger had been vital. The story of the 3-year-old girl, her mother, and a retired K-9 would be shared among law enforcement and community circles for years. It was a reminder that vigilance, courage, and instinct, whether in a trained dog, a professional, or even a child, could save lives in ways no one might expect. Meanwhile, Lily and her mother began the long process of emotional recovery. The mother explained gently that her daughter's bravery had prevented a tragedy, and Lily's small gestures became symbols of courage in their home. Each time she held her rabbit, each time she made the subtle hand gesture, it reminded them both of the day they had survived, of how instinct and bravery combined to overcome danger. Community members, upon hearing the story, were inspired by the collaboration of humans and animals, and by the courage of a child who refused to remain silent. Local media covered the story carefully, highlighting how Lily's secret hand signal and Ranger's instinctive guidance had made all the difference. Law enforcement shared the story as a case study, teaching others to recognize small but meaningful signs of distress. Daniel watched as Lily and her mother returned to normalcy, their bond strengthened by the ordeal. Ranger lay nearby, ears twitching at distant sounds, ever alert yet content. The day's events had been a testament to courage, teamwork, and the unexpected power of instinctual guidance. A 3-year-old girl, a retired K-9, and a vigilant former deputy had acted in unison to prevent tragedy. Their story would be remembered not for the danger itself, but for the bravery, intuition, and hope that overcame it. The highway, once a place of pursuit and danger, was now quiet under the night sky. The lights of nearby vehicles had disappeared, leaving only the faint glow of distant streetlights. Yet the memory of what had occurred remained vivid, a story of courage, instinct, and resilience. Lily's tiny hand signals, the unwavering focus of Ranger, and Daniel's calm vigilance had converged to create an extraordinary rescue. It was a story of hope and heroism that would resonate far beyond that stretch of road. As the night deepened, Daniel patted Ranger gently. "We did good today," he said softly. Ranger leaned into his hand, tail swishing. The retired K-9's instincts had never failed, guiding them through danger to safety. Daniel knew that together they had changed lives, one subtle hand gesture, one faithful canine instinct, and one vigilant human eye at a time. And in a quiet home nearby, Lily slept peacefully, her rabbit clutched to her chest, safe in the knowledge that her courage and instinctive gestures had saved her mother and herself. The secret hand signals, once small and unnoticed, had become the catalyst for hope, heroism, and a story that would live on in the hearts of all who witnessed it. In the end, it wasn't just a rescue. It was a testament to courage, intuition, and the enduring bond between humans and animals. Ranger lay at Daniel's feet, alert but content, as the night carried on quietly. The highway had returned to stillness, but the story of a tiny girl, a mother, and a retired K-9 remained alive. A story of hope, bravery, and the quiet signals that can change the world.